also the challenges very locally. How do we have hope? Where do we place our hope? And the world and commercials, advertisers are happy to fill in your answer to the question, or where do I place my hope? And we see that all the time. This particular car, like that is where your life will get good if you have this car. Or the promise of eternal youth, let's keep making ourselves young. Or getting together resources, or all these different things. So the world is happy to fill in that answer for us. Well, when we first started Agape a long time ago, there was a verse that was extremely meaningful to us that shapes why we have hope and continues to guide us to this day. And I want to read it, and speaking of being old, I need these now. I don't want to get it wrong. This verse, it was when Jesus is announcing his ministry, that's what it says in Luke chapter 4, but he's in the synagogue, and he reads from this passage in Isaiah, and I want to read it so I don't get it wrong. Jesus' words, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set free those who are oppressed, and to proclaim the favorable year of the Lord." I don't think he had glasses, but then he takes the scroll and he rolls it up and he gives it back to the attendant. And he sits down and all the eyes are on him. And he says, "Today, this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." And it sets off all this commotion because that's clearly a claim that he's saying, I am the one you've been waiting for. That Jesus, that representation of the gospel is the one that gives us hope. That we want to follow that Jesus into the work in this world. And that's where we place our hope. That's what we're doing. What does that look like? Well, it looks like Billy. Billy is one of the kids that came to our after-school program this year. And Billy came, he's a third grader. This is not Billy, but this is a picture of it kind of like Billy. But Billy was having a rough time, and you could see it. Like, behavior wasn't going well, assignments weren't going well. It was kind of going rough, and everybody could see it. And Miss Renee, instead of just saying, well, that's there's the behavior, there's the consequence, move along, she got curious. She got eyeball to eyeball with Billy and was asking what's going on, and said, "You can ask for what you need. What do you need?" And he musters up all the courage that he can, and he says, "I can't read." He's a third grader. You heard the statistics about third grade and what that means. How much courage did that take for him to do that? Every assignment, every question, who would like to read aloud, read the instructions on your math homework or on your history homework. You can't read. So Renee does two things. One, she makes it safe and says, "We're going to get you help. We're going to work on this. It's safe to admit that here, and we're going to get to work on that." Then she also challenged him. She said, you're bigger than that. Some of these outbursts you're having, you're bigger than that. And only the way that she challenges him, and he starts to change. And we get him in the reading program, getting help with that. So he can't start at the third grade level, maybe second grade, maybe even first grade. And he is marching through. And we know that if he stays with this all through the rest of this year and next year, he's going to get back on grade level reading. That's what it looks like for us to do that, release the captives, set free the oppressed. But you're not going to be burdened by that for your entire life and have the trajectory of your life set because at third grade you couldn't read. We're going to be changing that. Another thing it looks like, kind of a longer arc to one of these stories, is a young woman named Tiara. And Tiara came into our lives about 10 years ago. She had aged out of the foster care system, and that means you're really on your own at 18. But a mentor referred her to Agape and said they've got this gateway program, they've got housing and all these things, but it was right around Christmas time. And so people were out of town, it was tough to get them in. And my wife had done a lot of the initial interview and said, we need to bring her to our house. And so Tiara came to live with us over the Christmas holidays. She went to all the family events, went to the second cousin's Craig Christmas party and all these different things. And since then has been involved in so many different events of our family and been a part of that. She's become our goddaughter and really more like a daughter to us. And Tiara has gone through a lot of different ups and downs. Like many of you who have adult children, you give advice. If you are an adult child, you get advice, and sometimes you take it, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes that goes well, sometimes it doesn't. But we walked through her a number of different things. She was working her way through Houston Community College because it was safe. It was here, it was home, one class at a time, but she took a risk. She applied, was accepted, and enrolled at Texas Women's University. And last May, she received her bachelor's degree in social work. We're so proud of her. And then she is enrolled in grad school, and this summer she will finish her master's in social work, and she will help adolescents who are survivors of abuse and neglect make their lives whole. She will go into that work and live out that kind of gospel, that kind of hope, helping people to connect to how God's made them and to use those gifts for the better in this world. Recently, she came to us and she said, there's parts of my life I just have not surrendered to God. And God really got a hold of her in a new way this spring. And this Saturday, she's getting rebaptized. And she's repenting from some very specific things. She said, I was wrong. And we had this great moment of hugging and in tears. And she is taking her life in these healthy and great ways. And we're so proud of Tiara. If you stick around, if you come around, there are places where the hope shows up. Sometimes in those short time things, sometimes it takes a long time, 10 years to make, but it's always around us, and we always have that opportunity to see that hope fulfilled. Now, I'm not telling you that everything is at its happy ending or it's happily ever after. There's times when you show up, and rather than it be like stock market going up and to the right, we have a little dip, we have a little event. And all of our lives can go through that. They do go through that. I was confronted with this head on this past fall. I was running before lights, because now I have to do that because of carpool. I was talking to somebody that had seen me out there running. I was headed to McGregor Park, and there's a path on the bayou, and I run there most days. As I pull up, I can still see with the lamplight this young lady coming and approaching me. She looks distressed. She's barefoot. And she gets closer, I can see she's crying. And she said, will you call the police for me? Said, my boyfriend just hit me with a shoe or boot or something. It was confusing, and I was on high alert. I'm like, is she in trouble? Is this a scam? Is this a setup? And I'm scared. But she's clearly scared. We call the police. And as I'm on the phone trying to get the police to come to the park, this boyfriend starts walking back up, and I'm honking the horn, flashing my lights, telling them to buzz off, and I said, I've got the police on the phone right now. He is not intimidated in the least. He says he's gonna fight her, he's gonna fight me, fight the dog in the back seat of the car. It was crazy. We eventually get him to leave. We're sitting there, we're waiting for the police to come. She tells me her story. In just a short amount of time, I find out she's aged out of foster care. She's been trafficked by this guy. This is not the first time this has happened. I said, he's promised he won't do this. Yeah, he's promised he won't do this. It's gonna happen again. Do not go back to him. And we wait 45 minutes, not doing my run, not doing that, just like I'm trying to wait for the police to get there. They don't show. I said, I've got to go take my daughter to school. Here's where Agape is. Go, I come back, she's gone. I've been there dozens of times since, haven't found her. There are still stories like that, and I'm praying that she walks through the doors of Agape. I'm praying that she doesn't go back to that guy. I go to the park, I look for her. There's still stories like that, and that's why we still need your support for the people that are not on their path to wholeness yet. They're still in those chains. They're still captive to those different parts of their life that are breaking down. Now, when things like that happen, sometimes we go searching for what's the societal reason that that's happened? And we can do one of two things. The world will do one of two things, I think. One, they start to how can I get all the resources for me and mine to make sure I'm never in a vulnerable position? I don't think that's the gospel that Jesus shared with us. The other thing is they might say, let's start blaming, let's start pointing the finger. And they'll say, whose sin was it that got her in this predicament? Was it hers? Was it her parents? Was that? I don't think that's the Jesus that we follow doesn't do that either. He laid down his life and sacrificed to move into that kind of love. And when we chose the word agape, that word means love. I'm not a Greek scholar, I'm not a pastor. There are pastors in the room today that can probably come up here and give you a really great definition. But at the very least, what agape means, it's the kind of love that sacrifices for the good of another. It has to be self-emptying, just like God emptied himself and came down here to live for us. That we have the opportunity to join him in that and to lay down part of our lives to see this amazing transformation, to see this kind of hope happen. That's what we were trying to do at Agape. And it looks like a whole lot of different things, but Sosie mentioned about housing. That's been a big piece. One of the ways that we tangibly love our neighborhood is through housing. We have bought 107 vacant lots in the community. We're building those 80 homes. We're selling them to families. The average income of the families who bought our homes, the affordable homes, is $46,000. To be able to become a homeowner, to have permanence, $46,000. And that's because a lot of people are helping out. There's a lot of Agape love going on to make that happen, from folks in the building side of things. Really appreciate the partnership there. From folks on the donor side of things, from the neighbors themselves who are doing a lot. It takes a whole lot to make that happen, and we are so grateful. There was an article recently, though, about housing in Houston earlier this month in the Chronicle. It said Houston is the second worst city when it comes to housing the very low income. And what that means is, as I read through the article, there's a calculation of what very low income is. There's how many homes in your city are affordable for families making that income relative to the number that you have. And so we rank second worst. And we could argue about those statistics, but the bottom line is there's a big need. Agape has 31 rental houses today, rental units. One of them is the Haven of OST. That's a motel. It was the no-tell motel in our neighborhood. We bought it, we closed it down. Great transformation story, but now it's 21 units of affordable rental housing for households of up to 2 that need a place to stay. We have 9 rental houses. We have a tiny house. So we have these 31 rental units to try to meet this need of the city that's the second worst in housing the very low income affordably. We've got a team of people, of volunteers, of board members that are working on strategic solutions to grow that. We want to grow it to 50 to 100 and beyond to meet the need. There's 26,000 residents in OST South Union, that neighborhood that we talked about. 26,000 residents, a third of them are in low income or very low income that need these kind of resources. So that's what we're doing to show that tangible love, to not say whose fault is it, where, how do we just get those resources for us, but how do we give sacrificially to meet that need? And that's some of what you have already done today. So what happens when you get a family of 9 that's living in a motel and says, can you help us get housing? It takes a lot of agape love to make that happen. There's first the agape love of people years ago who gave to our capital campaign, and we were able to buy a house that was cheap enough to be affordable, but not a total disaster where we could actually fix it up. And some of you have seen some of these houses, and you might think, maybe that one should have been demolished, but we believe in resurrection, and so some of these houses are coming back to life. That home, then, there were a lot of agape love neighbors and volunteers who came and fixed it up. They did demo work, they hauled off the trash, they painted the inside, they kept up the lawn. There was staff that showed their agape love and the skills they used to coordinate all the subcontractors, to get the plumbing fixed, to get the electrical. There was agape love in terms of the staff that coordinated this family's arrival. There was agape love of somebody who made a scholarship available so that the rent could be affordable. And there was agape love in the parents of this family that said, I don't have a voucher. The system's not gonna get me out of this, but I'm gonna give what I can. I'm gonna make a contract. I'm gonna commit myself so that my 7 kids can afford to stay in a home. And now we have this family in here. Without the agape love of everybody in the room and beyond, that doesn't happen. And so we are so grateful to be able to get to do that kind of thing. Make sure I don't go over. Our answer to that question of hope continues to be that people will lay down their lives, and they will lay down things that are theirs to sacrifice so that others can have something that is beautiful and wonderful in our community. About 2 years ago, we did a ribbon cutting ceremony and for our homes. And the Williams family was one of those first families that bought one of our affordable homes. It was really a beautiful day. They had come, Chris and Jimna had come to a meeting to hear about this hope that we were saying, we're gonna have affordable homes 3 years prior to this date. And they did the program. They went to the classes, they did the volunteer hours, they made a will, they did all these different things. They got their income where they could qualify for a loan. And then at this ceremony, he spoke about what it meant to him. and a lot of people spoke, but his words meant the most to me. He said, a lot of people come through our neighborhood. A lot of people make a lot of promises. And, it could be elected officials. It could be well-meaning people, but life gets busy and they move on to their next thing. And he said, a lot of people make a lot of promises. And then he looks, and there's a row of us of staff that are there. And he looks at us, he says, but you, Agape, you kept your promise. And I was a mess. I was in tears that day. I just couldn't, to have that testimony from a neighbor, that's what the world is looking for. They don't care so much about, our crafty arguments about who Jesus is. They look at our social media, but really, the world's looking, and the next generation is looking to see if we keep our promises. If we live up to that promise of releasing the captives and setting them free, declaring the favorable year of the Lord, good news to the poor, that's what they're looking to see. And that's what we all have the opportunity to do, is keep our promise there. It was 19 years ago when we started Agape, and I was doing young adult Bible studies all the time. And as a 27-year-old at that time, I could kind of fit in as a young adult peer leader, and at least age-wise, I could kind of fit in. I always stuck out there. But I visited, literally last Monday, I visited the young adult Bible study with a bunch of young men, and was sitting in there. I did not quite fit in as much age-wise. But they were going around introducing name, age 18. Name, age 20. Name, I'm about to turn 19. The next guy. Name, I already turned 19. So when it came around to me, I said, I'm Kirk, and I also already turned 19. But it was really interesting. It was beautiful. It was interesting and beautiful to have all these flashbacks of those first Bible studies I was doing. And a lot of the same things are happening today, 19 years later. That the leaders of those Bible studies live in the neighborhood. They have the guys over to their house. They were going to watch the Final Four, the national championship game right after that. They're cooking meals together, hanging out, doing all those same things. I'm sitting in a beanbag chair, and across from me in another beanbag chair is a young man. And it was 19 years ago that his father, Derek, a lot of you remember me telling the story about Derek from many events, where I met him at the very beginning of our ministry, and his son DJ was just a baby at the time. And I've had the privilege to know Derek during these past 19 years, and seeing God do miracles in his life and miracles in my life, and been blessed to see all this transformation and how he has gone from being someone who didn't have a father, mother died during a time that we knew him, was on the brink of being a statistic. And he hasn't done it all perfectly, none of us has. But he has set his children up to have a better life than he has and to follow the Lord. And so now I'm sitting across from Derek Jr. And I know that Derek Jr. has been raised with parents who love him, parents that are engaged. He has a pastor that he knows. There have been people that have been praying for him since the time he was born, and relationships that he can go to. That is what it takes. It takes, every single one of us needs that in our lives, a whole host of people to show us that agape love. And that's what we have the opportunity to do. That's what you've given us the opportunity to do as staff. And I'm so grateful for your blessings. So thank you very much. And I'm going to invite Link to come up.